It's been suggested that our next avenue of exploration is to look at the inward and the outward. But before we continue our exploration, perhaps we can solve this dilemma. Since the very early times that there were visitors coming to sit, it was sometimes said to them, "This is the Buddha mind, and this is the lotus of the heart. We have to connect the Buddha mind to the lotus, and as soon as the Buddha's feet are placed in the lotus, it's inevitable that the Buddha mind will sink and take its rightful place in the lotus." But over these last days, in looking at social media, it seems that every pundit, every suggestion from every scholar that's out there is we have to turn inwards. Inwards. So the question that's asked is, what is the relationship? What is your experience or your perception of being connected and turning inward? Perhaps for myself, this saying, this suggestion arose from the personal experience of being connected. And it isn't recalled that there was a process of turning inward. What is it for you? But there is a story, and it's that story about Alexander the Great. And of course we know that Alexander was a conqueror, a great, great warrior. He traversed the world and he took on every perceived enemy. He fought and won. But there was a time when Alexander was introspective, you might say, and he said to those around him, "I've explored the world, I've conquered the world, but I do not know the ways of the ocean. I would like to dive deep into the ocean to learn of the ocean." So he had his followers create for him a bell with a sturdy, long rope attached to it. And he placed himself in that bell, and taking with him a live cockerel and a stone that had come into his possession that glowed constantly, eternally, making night into day. He wore this as an amulet around his neck. And then he had himself lowered into the ocean. Now, he was amazed. He saw things that he had never seen before. A vista, animals, creatures of all kinds. But unbeknownst to him, after his soldiers had lowered the bell attached to its rope into the ocean, a great eagle came down and bit through the rope, so that the bell was released, having no thread, and so it sunk deeper and deeper into the ocean. Alexander was mesmerized. He saw things, unimaginable things, a panorama that just took his breath away. But unbeknownst to him, the tides carried the bell far, far away from the place in which it was lowered by his soldiers. After some long while, and it was suggested by Alexander himself that he should remain under the ocean for 1 year. But in his bell, with his stone, he had no idea of the passing of day and night. But one day he thought to himself, it is time to return. So, as was said, he killed the cockerel and allowed its blood to be released, which was a sign to his soldiers to draw up the rope. But as it happened, the ocean in which Alexander found himself was so pure that any contaminant of any kind was immediately neutralized. So the blood of the cockerel was dispersed. And in fact, his soldiers had long gone from their place of vigil, having had the rope cut. But, as it happened, Alexander's bell was carried by the tide onto a shore. And when Alexander alighted from the bell, he was surrounded by a people that he had never encountered before, because these people had only one eye in the middle of their forehead. But when these people saw Alexander with 2 eyes, they immediately felt that he was some kind of god. So he, in fact, became their ruler. But Alexander was anxious to return to his own land. So he took leave of these people, this populace, and made his way into the wilderness, a wilderness. He could not find his way. But suddenly, in fact, in seeking shelter from the elements, he found an opening to a cave. And when he entered that cave, it took him 7 days and 7 nights, with the aid of that light that did not make night night. And there he found and encountered an old man who said to him, "Art thou Alexander?" And of course Alexander affirmed that he was that. And the man then proceeded to tell Alexander all about him. He knew every detail of Alexander's life, both his conquests, his experiences, and his endeavors. Alexander was greatly amazed by this, but he was still at a loss. How was he to find his way back to that place from whence he came? The old man, reading his mind, said, "I will show you the way, only if you make a promise to me." Alexander readily avowed what was presented by the old man, and strangely, immediately, he found himself on an island that it so happened faced the mainland that he had embarked from. So Alexander proceeded to make himself a raft out of reeds and planks that were on the island, so that he was able to paddle his way back to the mainland, where, as it happened, exactly 1 year had passed, and although the soldiers had left that place, they came at that time to pay homage to one they thought was lost. Alexander was able to relate his experiences, all his experiences. But the question that arises from this story is, what is the promise, the oath that Alexander made to enable him to be given the way back into what we could translate as being existence? So are these two questions? What is the relationship with being connected and turning inward? And what is the covenant, the oath, the pledge, the vow that was made to enable Alexander to return to life? What comes first? Connectedness, inward and outer, turning inward. Perhaps our explorations will allow us to answer these questions, if indeed you have not already answered them from your experience.
Well, the first thing that popped into my mind